If you don't learn to read, think about everything you can't do.
What are you?
Her teacher approached me and said, there's this wonderful program, but I just didn't see any progress. She still couldn't read.
The only explanation that I think is plausible is that reading recovery actually does harm students.
Just do your best.
I can't. I don't know any of these words.
I don't trust that it has a negative impact on students.
If you could just walk a mile where we've been and what this does to a kid.
They tell me I don't try hard enough.
We're talking about life or death, literally right now.
Colleagues, 70% of our fourth graders are struggling to read on grade level.
That is an emergency 5-alarm fire across all areas.
We are crippling our young learners by not teaching them how to read.
Hi, I'm investigative reporter Andy Perotti. Georgia lawmakers banned controversial teaching methods this year used to help children learn to read for decades, following multiple Atlanta News First investigations. The legislation also overhauls how future teachers are trained in reading instruction. It's intended to address a statewide crisis. By fourth grade, only 1 in 3 Georgia students can read proficiently, according to a state assessment. Tonight, we reveal potential causes to the problem and why parents and experts are now calling for a reading reset and how children are taught.
There was no way. That's why you want.
That's why.
That's why.
Reading
No.
does not come easy for Sophia Quinn.
Think about that.
The 14-year-old struggles with dyslexia.
You in on the kidnapping too.
A few years ago, her first grade teacher in Gwinnett County, Georgia, took notice and offered to help.
Her teacher approached me and said, there's this wonderful program. We select one kid from each class, the bottom of the reading level. It's one-on-one. They're going to try and help her.
Sounded like a godsend.
Yeah, I felt like, ooh, they're rolling out the red carpet for me. This is going to be great. I was so thankful.
After 20 weeks in the program, Sophia's reading did not improve.
What's the cheapest pet you got?
It seemed to be getting worse. And what frustrated her mother the most, the school called her daughter a success story and suggested passing her on to the next grade.
I felt like they felt I should be celebratory, like, oh my gosh, thank you. But I just didn't see any progress. She still couldn't read. So now all the alarms are going off, and I'm expressing my frustration with how are we passing her, but she can't read.
A-V.
This is Matthew Purcell. He was in the same reading program as Sophia.
Whenever I do my best.
A few months into it, his mother, Missy, noticed something strange. She says while Matthew was reading at home, she saw him guessing words using pictures on the page, not sounding the words out.
Third grade, level D.
Missy is a former school teacher herself.
Most of the time when he was reading, he was looking at the words and then the pictures, words, pictures, words, pictures. So he was reading pictures. He was being cued by the pictures.
What Missy is talking about is a reading method called 3-cueing. It's a theory where kids are encouraged to only sample the letters and the words in the text, relying mostly on prediction and context for comprehension. For example, a child may be shown a page with this picture and text. If the child can't read the word sad, they're often asked to look at the dog and ask themselves if the word they're thinking makes sense. Does it sound right? Does it look right? Some experts believe cueing doesn't put enough emphasis on phonics, sounding out words.
I remember it was kind of hard and stressful because they told me to guess and look at the pictures to spell the words and stuff.
Problems with reading and frustration lingered after leaving the program.
Can't read it.
Here's Matthew about 4 years later.
Just do your best.
I can't. I don't know any of these words.
The program Matthew and Sophia were enrolled in is called Reading Recovery. It's one-on-one instruction for the lowest performing students in first grade struggling to read.
Does that make sense?
This is video of a reading recovery teacher in Kentucky posted on YouTube 9 years ago. The teacher repeatedly stops the child from sounding out words.
Why are you doing that? Quit doing that. Quit. You can't sound out. I don't know why you started doing that. Stop doing that. Stop.
Once hailed as one of the most effective intervention models used in Georgia and across the country for decades, an Atlanta News First investigation uncovered evidence reading recovery could be harmful to children.
The findings were not in the direction that reading recovery expected.
Henry May is a professor at the University of Delaware. Reading Recovery asked him to conduct the largest study of its program ever, tracking thousands of students in multiple states over 13 years. Last year, he published his results, showing the short-term impact to students largely positive. But then,
it wasn't until we looked at the kids' outcomes years later, when they reached 3rd and 4th grade, that we saw that the results had completely flipped, and that the differences between the students who received reading recovery and the comparison group that did not, the reading recovery kids were actually worse off. There was a negative impact of reading recovery.
If you have something that has research that shows that it is harmful, not only just not beneficial, but harmful to children, it should be banned.
While at least 19 states have banned 3Qing or walked away from reading recovery over the past few years, an Atlanta News First investigation uncovered Georgia State University continues to use it, running a training center for teachers to learn reading recovery methods to bring back to the classroom. Since 2023, school districts in 5 states, including Georgia, had paid the university $243,000 for the instruction.
I said I wasn't gonna get emotional today, but it actually literally makes me sad. If you could just walk a mile where we've been and what this does to a kid, who's gonna tell their parents that those kids and those systems drew the short straw? Who's gonna tell them that their school has chosen to train teachers in a method that we have evidence that shows not only does it not work, but it hurts kids?
Is Georgia State University missing the boat on this?
No, Georgia State's not missing the boat.
Dr. Caitlin Dooley is the chair of the university's Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education. She does not believe reading recovery harms children, pointing to previous studies that have shown positive results.
It's been around for a long time. It has a strong scientific background, and so we are offering it when it's in demand. And there are still districts that are requesting that we provide that training, and we believe that it works.
The Reading Recovery Council of North America, which develops the curriculum, and Dr. Dooley both tell Atlanta News First Investigates they consider Professor May's study flawed, pointing out that 75% of its original participants dropped out.
And then there was also no evidence of what we call dosage, which is the amount of intervention that kids got. So they could have had 1 lesson with reading recovery, or they could have had 50 lessons. We don't know from the way this study was written up.
Professor May says he and his team anticipated those critiques.
And we actually collected and then conducted sensitivity analyses to figure out whether or not those criticisms even held water. And it turned out that they don't. That no matter how we analyze the data, and no matter what other data we bring to bear, there is no denying that we see a negative impact of reading recovery. And the only explanation that I think is plausible is that reading recovery actually does harm students.
The criticism of Georgia State University doesn't stop with its Reading Recovery Training Center. A national education policy group says there are flaws with its elementary bachelor program, which prepares future teachers for the classroom. Last year, the National Council on Teacher Quality published this report after researching ways future teachers were trained in reading instruction. It gave 191 college programs in 44 states a failing grade. Georgia State University is one of them, in part because it found evidence of 3Qing and other methods it calls contrary practices in its course syllabi. Heather Pesky is the organization's president.
And the reason that we call them contrary practices, Andy, is because they run counter to the science. So these are instructional techniques that have actually been debunked by the science. techniques that in fact are not good for kids in learning to read.
And the consequences to students is?
The consequence to students is it wastes their time, it can be harmful to them in learning to read, and ultimately it means that the teachers aren't successful, and that's a big part of the reason why in Georgia right now, only 1 in 3 fourth graders is reading proficiently.
Yeah, we don't put a lot of stock into the NCTQ report.
Why?
We think it's a very incomplete and inaccurate way of looking at the quality of our instruction. They have historically been a gotcha organization, and we believe that the quality of our instruction is very good.
While Dr. Dooley says GSU doesn't teach the 3Qing method, she also claims she's not sure what it is. I guess I'm just surprised that you don't know what 3Qing is, and states have banned it across the country.
I would say that it's because the term itself has been morphed into something that has no basis in the scientific research. When I see headlines like that, I think you're banning pretty much everything. Are we saying that kids shouldn't have pictures in their books? It doesn't make any sense.
I'm trying to get to the bottom.
Education systems in Georgia and across the country undergoing a reading reset of their curriculum.
Why does all of this matter?
We've got children across the state who are products of a failed intervention.
While some institutions hold on to long-time controversial teaching practices.
The reading recovery community has taken our results and simply dismissed them, and they have elected not to change and improve their program. And that, to me, is really disappointing.
You can't change what you don't know, but now that you do know, let's change and do what's best. Just do the right thing. Like, these are kids.
Coming up, a warning from the U.S. Department of Justice and why parents claim a publishing giant is part of the problem.
They end up with a sense of hopelessness. It can be devastating for their whole lives.
A pending lawsuit claims a publishing company sold defective instructional material to school districts across the country for decades, hurting children's ability to read. It includes schools right here in Georgia.
Just one day I decided I wanted to draw. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff in my room.
Nicholas Hooks walks into a room full of imagination.
This one over here is actually an anime called Demon Slayer.
Anime characters with special powers. His favorite fights with 3 swords.
Oh, there's Zoro. He's a very cool character that I really like.
The 11-year-old sees a lot of himself in Zoro. Both often feel lost.
He loses his way, I lose my way.
Zoro gets lost on his way to battle. Nicholas gets lost in the words he's reading. The Gwinnett County student wrestles with dyslexia.
I always think about doing something that Zoro does, slicing the papers.
Because you just get frustrated?
Yes. When the work gets too hard and it makes your head hurt, it makes you not want to do the work anymore. It makes you angry, upset.
Irina is Nicholas's mother. Despite her repeated pleas for help since he was in the 1st grade, she says the Gwinnett County School District has not provided the resources or properly trained teachers to help her son learn to read.
This is not the time.
He's now in the 5th grade, but at a 3rd grade reading level.
For that, it has been a journey, a very tough journey, because his learning experience has impacted his mental health to the point where he hates himself and he wants to unalive himself.
When you say unalive himself, what do you mean?
I mean suicidal ideations. And he only has these thoughts at school. He's actually written a letter in school saying, "Just let me die."
An Atlanta News First investigation uncovered a potential source to students' struggle in the classroom. A pending lawsuit claims reading curriculum distributed to school districts for decades was defective. The suit filed against Heinemann Publishing is on behalf of 2 Massachusetts parents whose children were taught using its products. It accuses the publisher of failing to warn parents or school districts that their alleged literacy training products did not include meaningful phonics instruction, the one thing essential to literacy success. Benjamin Elga is the parent's attorney.
The consequences are devastating. Not only do these children end up suffering extreme mental anguish, missing out on the education that they would otherwise obtain if they could read, but they end up with a sense of hopelessness that can be devastating for their whole lives.
According to district records, Gwinnett County Schools, the largest in the state, paid Heinemann more than $9 million for instructional materials since at least 2018.
She's just doing a lot for me.
Parents like Arena now wonder how the curriculum impacted their children. According to a state assessment, only 1 in 3 Georgia fourth graders can read proficiently.
For me, it's a gut punch, right? Because my son is not performing and it's not his fault.
Heinemann has not shied away with what it thinks about phonics, posting on its website in 2019 that it needs to be lean and efficient, and that every minute you spend teaching phonics is less time spent teaching other things. Today, Elga says the publisher has acknowledged the need for more phonics curriculum, but claims it charges for the updated materials.
Think about it this way. If somebody sold you a car and it was defective or missing a part, and you went back to them, they wouldn't get to charge you for the fix. It would be their responsibility to fix their defect. And yet, today, the defendants in our case are turning around and trying to sell school districts additional patches to their curricula to add phonics back in for more money. That is an outrageous situation.
Our emails and phone calls to Heinemann were not returned, but the lawsuit also accuses some of its authors of producing deceptive materials, including Gay Sue Pinnell, the architect of Reading Recovery, once one of the most popular reading intervention programs in the nation. A 13-year study released by the University of Delaware in 2023 found it can be harmful to children, its author noting it does not put enough emphasis on phonics.
If these students are struggling to decode words, they're struggling to sound out more complicated words, that's going to have implications for their ability to comprehend text for the rest of their lives.
Pinnell did not respond to Atlanta News First's repeated request for a response.
I'll give you an example.
Nicholas took part in Reading Recovery too. Gwinnett County recently stopped using it, but his mother says the damage may already be done. They're considering moving to get him the help he needs.
If it means our son lives to see another day, we are willing to go the extreme. We're talking about life or death, literally right now.
Nicholas speaking up to spread awareness, fighting just like his hero to help others and himself.
If I can help you with your story, if some people watch the news, it can help with them a lot with their kids. It could help a lot of people.
According to court filings, attorneys for Heinemann and Gay Sue Pinnell have asked the judge to dismiss the lawsuit, claiming a courtroom is not the appropriate venue to determine if the claims are valid. So far, a judge has not ruled on the motion. 30 years ago, the U.S. Department of Justice warned that colleges and universities were not properly preparing teachers to help students learn to read. The potential impact to Georgia, the highest incarceration rates in the nation.
I've never visited. I think it's going to be really interesting. It's a little nerve-wracking.
Kayla Hill is headed somewhere she doesn't want to go.
I might cry, honestly, because life's a lot different today.
On her way to the Barrow County Detention Center in Northeast Georgia, where she served time behind bars in and out of custody, 6 years for drug-related offenses, but this time as a free woman and sober.
When you walk through the doors of this jail, what were you thinking?
A lot. Really sad for the girl who came here. And honestly, just really, really proud.
Kayla says what saved her was a program to help get her GED while incarcerated. Before, the 33-year-old says she struggled to read basic words.
I remember being in Miss Harden's class at Belmont Elementary. And I think that's where I realized that I had an issue with reading. And they were going around the room, and I had no idea, like, where people were when they were reading, how they knew what they were saying.
A report published by the U.S. Department of Justice 30 years ago echoes Kayla's struggle in the classroom, shedding light on the link between poor reading proficiency and incarceration, revealing that reading failure is most likely a cause, not just a correlate for delinquent behavior, adding on average, incarcerated juvenile offenders are severely crippled readers. Judd Smith is the Barrow County Sheriff.
It's plug and play. It is 100% a link that if you do not have literacy and you don't have an education, you are walking down a path of recidivism, criminal activity, and then at that point, you're taken from society.
Testing results released by the National Assessment of Education Progress released this year underscores the severity of the problem. The line on this graph identifies what's considered a proficient reader in fourth grade. Since 1998, Georgia's fourth grade reading scores have never reached that proficiency goal. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, Georgia locks up 968 per 100,000 people. That's not only the highest in the U.S., the state incarcerates more people than any free democratic country on earth.
Would you say, other than mental health, that low literacy is maybe the second most contributing factor of whether you're going to be in a jail or not in your lifetime?
I think that's very safe to say, and I think that all the data shows that.
So why are literacy rates so poor in Georgia? The DOJ report places blame on colleges and universities for not adequately preparing future teachers, concluding that most teachers have little or no knowledge of phonetics or intensive systematic phonics programs. In other words, not enough focus on instruction that includes sounding out words. The tragic side effect, the report wrote, is that reading teachers inadvertently victimize their students with less effective, if not ineffective, reading instruction.
It hurts my heart. The word victimize seems like such a strong word, but it's true. It's true.
Shannon Hammond is Executive Director of Adult Literacy Barrow. She spent decades as a Georgia elementary school teacher and administrator.
We are crippling our young learners by not teaching them how to read.
Shannon says teachers are not to blame. She says they were only teaching how they were told to teach by universities. Before she left the public school system last year, she helped retrain teachers explicitly using phonics in their curriculum.
I would have tears from teachers in the sessions, and they would just say, I feel so guilty. I think about all the students that I've taught that I did a disservice to. And I always use the Maya Angelou quote about we do the best we can until we know better, but once we know better, we have to do better.
30 years after the DOJ study, an education policy group says higher education is largely not doing better. The National Council on Teacher Quality, or NCTQ, published a report in 2023 concluding that too many teachers are not training in scientifically based reading instruction. It gave 191 college programs in 44 states a failing grade, including 7 institutions in Georgia, after identifying what it calls debunked reading methods in course material.
If I was paying to be in medical school and you were teaching me outdated medical treatments, that would not be okay. And I don't think medical schools could get away with that. So why do colleges of education get away with that?
The University System of Georgia has oversight of higher education in the state. It did not respond to requests for an interview, but wrote to Atlanta News First Investigates that it has strong concerns with NCTQ's findings, which studies have shown rely on flawed research methodology.
What we're just really doing is we want best practice for our kids.
State Representative Bethany Ballard, a former English teacher, and State Senator Billy Hickman do not dismiss the NCTQ's findings. They want state universities to prove they are training future reading teachers the right way.
My favorite quote for Ronald Reagan is, "Trust but verify." We need to be auditing whether they're really doing it.
I think it was scary having to learn how to believe in myself.
3 years after earning her GED, Kayla is more than a proficient reader. She's a teacher at Lanier Technical College, helping students learn to well, giving them new skills and a chance at a bright future, something she almost didn't see for herself.
It gave me something to tell my kids that I'd done for myself that I was proud of. It is probably the biggest moment in my life.
Next, Georgia lawmakers take action, and a school district reveals its secret to beating the odds.
I think it's very simple in Marietta. Our time and our money are a reflection of what we value.
Right now, Georgia schools are implementing a new state-mandated reading curriculum aimed at improving literacy. But education advocates say teachers need more help. We found one school district setting a possible example.
I'm also going to grab my water. I go into classrooms all of the time.
Katie Gaudette sprints to her next classroom.
I leave my water in every grade level.
Always on the move, working with teachers.
Are there any kids who you need to highlight who have a low accuracy rate?
And students.
Let's look at the word street.
At A.L. Burris Elementary School in Marietta, with one goal in mind, improving literacy. Katie isn't a teacher, she's a literacy coach for teachers.
That U sounds tricky, so I'm going to put my little heart there. I'm here all day, every day. Whenever anybody needs anything, I'm there to help them and support them. And it's not always that I know all the answers, because I don't.
Literacy coaches are typically someone with years of experience in the classroom and extensive training in something called the science of reading. It's a set of evidence-based instruction mandated by Georgia lawmakers in 2023 to address a statewide crisis. By fourth grade, only 1 in 3 students can read proficiently, according to a state assessment.
There had to be a degree of vulnerability to acknowledge that maybe we weren't doing it right before.
To make it right, Grant Rivera took action in his district as Marietta School superintendent, embracing the science of reading early and hiring literacy coaches about 4 years ago. Since then, its literacy rates have soared, widely surpassing almost every district in Georgia. Its third grade reading scores 5 times higher than the state average. The success across all demographics, Black, disabled, and economically disadvantaged students all saw double-digit gains in proficient literacy rates.
Folks, that's not luck, that's learning.
I think it's very simple in Marietta. Our time and our money are a reflection of what we value. If we say that we value students reaching their fullest reading and writing potential, not just on grade level. There's not a parent in the world who's okay with their kid just sitting at grade level. We want our kids to reach their fullest reading and writing potential, every child.
What vowels do you see? It's been shocking to us as well, of the level of success that we've seen in the reading that we see happening in the building and the writing, and also math has improved just because of the reading work.
So it has this trickle-down effect.
Absolutely.
2 years ago, the district also hired 37 reading specialists.
All of the words.
The additional staff means classroom ratios are now 1 teacher to no more than 10 students at a time.
That sounds expensive.
Well, it's not cheap, but so too is a child who can't read. That impact to me is far more than anything we could quantify in terms of personnel.
We will listen and we will do.
Scott Johnson is chair of the Georgia Council on Literacy, a task force created by the legislature 2 years ago to improve literacy rates.
If this were not a crisis, every voting member of the General Assembly would not have voted to create this body.
Think for a second.
While implementing the science of reading is the council's focus, Scott believes districts need more help. He's asking lawmakers this session to fund a literacy coach just like Katie for every elementary school in this state.
When you engage in implementing that coaching, that is key to success, and there's no real substitute for it.
The mission is personal to the chairman. His grandson has dyslexia.
My grandson, Luke, was in the car with my wife and I, and kind of unprompted, he said, "Have you ever known a second grader that couldn't read?" And I said, "What, Luke?" And he said, "Have you ever known a second grader that can't read?" "I can't read." And
he said that to you?
He said that to me. I'm not worried about Luke anymore. Because we got resources to take care of him. But if you don't, if you're the mom that is working, coming home, struggling at the kitchen table, it's a different story. And I'm not going to rest until every kid in Georgia gets what he can.
My challenge to you is to use a verb.
A state grappling with improving the foundation to educate children. One district setting a possible example.
Have y'all had a chance to look at your spelling data? I've heard somebody say this, and I've kind of thought I'd like to adopt it of, it's not just my job, it's my hobby. If in my car, I'm listening to a podcast about literacy. If I'm at home, I'm reading and looking at research articles whenever I can outside of the building because I feel so passionately about it.
You're living and breathing it.
We are.
Parents and education advocates flooded Georgia's Capitol this year, pleading for reform to address the state's literacy crisis. We sat down with 2 lawmakers pledging to fix the problem.
Thank you. 228? Yeah. That's 234.
Through the crowded hallways of Georgia's state capitol,
Hi, do you have a moment to chat?
Heather Kissinger and her daughter Katie are on a mission to educate lawmakers.
Oh, hi. I have met with you before. It is chaotic. There are several groups here today, so any lawmaker that walks by, we're going to grab and we're going to try and have a short conversation with.
Advocating about an issue close to their hearts, literacy.
So in 4th grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia.
It's the basis of all learning.
Right.
And we got to get it right.
They're asking lawmakers to remove controversial methods used to teach children to read for decades, including 3-cueing. It's a strategy where kids are often encouraged to only sample letters in the text using pictures as clues to learn unfamiliar words. Many literacy experts believe it doesn't put enough emphasis on phonics.
And you basically guess or you infer what that's trying to say.
Heather says her daughter was also taught using 3-cueing, setting her back academically. At least 19 states have banned it so far.
It's horrible for kids, not just dyslexic kids, but the rest of them. If 3-cueing is allowed for any of these kids, it makes poor readers out of the majority of the group as well. That group a few minutes ago.
Heather and her parent group also want schools to stop using reading recovery. It's state-approved intervention or tutoring intended to help struggling readers in 1st grade. It's actually codified in state code. It has a history of using the 3-cueing method. 2 years ago, a University of Delaware study which tracked thousands of students over 13 years found reading recovery harms children's ability to read.
Should reading recovery still be in state code as an intervention?
No, it shouldn't.
State Representative Bethany Ballard filed a bill this session that would ban 3-cueing and remove reading recovery from state code.
So that we make sure that our schools and our teacher preparation schools will be teaching the right thing and making sure everybody's aligned with the science of reading.
In an email to Atlanta News First Investigates, Reading Recovery of North America pushed back, writing, "It is the most studied, most successful short-term reading intervention in the world, with 40 years of documented success." It also claims laws that ban 3-cueing inadvertently ban teachers from teaching phonics.
great bill.
The legislation, supported by Senator Billy Hickman, chairman of the Senate Committee on Education and Youth. Their goal to fix a statewide crisis. By fourth grade, only 1 in 3 Georgia students can read proficiently.
This is Georgia's most solvable problem.
5 years from now, where do you think Georgia's literacy rates are going to be?
I think we're going to be at the top or near
We're
the
going to be
top.
at the top. The goal is to be at the top.
To meet that goal, literacy experts believe Georgia universities play a key role, but aren't doing enough. A recent study published by the National Council on Teacher Quality gave 7 Georgia colleges and universities a failing grade in how they prepare future teachers for the classroom, in part because it found evidence of 3Qing and other methods it calls debunked teaching practices in its course syllabi. Every university Atlanta News First Investigates reached out to dismissed the council's findings.
Nobody really questions universities.
Kareem Reaver is executive director at Fulcrum, a nonprofit literacy organization.
Even if you say, well, we don't necessarily think we're an F score, do you think you're an A score? Are your teachers coming out prepared to teach children how to read? You know, as my grandmother would say, something's in the milk. If you're getting an F on that rating score, and they're listing all the reasons why after examining your syllabus, something's going on.
Georgia State University received a failing grade 2. It's run a reading recovery training center since at least the 1990s. Here's what the chair of GSU's Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education told Atlanta News First Investigates in December.
It's been around for a long time. It has a strong scientific background, and we believe that it works.
Shortly after publishing the interview, the university scrubbed all references of reading recovery from its website, but has declined to confirm whether it's still teaching it today.
So if it's happening, if they're still being a launching pad for teachers and having that be a core part of their learning journey, I would ask them to rethink their mission, and that the audio has to match their video.
Should we go up the stairs or take an elevator?
Parents working to reset reading curriculums, they say is needed in Georgia classrooms.
And let me just tell you, if you don't have the financial resources that we had to fight for your child will not be successful. So that's why we're here, because we want the families behind us to not have to fight the way that we did.
Coming up, a legislative campaign for change comes to a close.
Colleagues, 70% of our fourth graders are struggling to read on grade level.
Lawmakers and parents react.
Yes!
After months of Atlanta News First investigations into Georgia's literacy crisis, state lawmakers passed sweeping legislation aimed at transforming how reading is taught. While some education experts worry it goes too far, others believe it will fix a problem plaguing classrooms for decades.
The lady is recognized to present Senate Bill 93.
I have Senate Bill 93, which ensures Georgia teachers are ready to teach reading to our children on day one.
Missy Purcell watches Georgia lawmakers do something she didn't think was possible.
All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes.
Yes. Yeas 168, nays 0.
Voting to ban a controversial teaching method used to help students learn to read.
The same words.
Something Missy says harmed her son Matthew when he was in the first grade.
Can't read it.
Just do your best.
I can't. I don't know any of these words.
We first met the Gwinnett County mother last year.
If you could just walk a mile where we've been and what this does to a kid.
So it took a long time, but now we have unanimous support to turn the ship around and do the right thing by our kids.
What lawmakers banned is 3Qing, a method where kids only sample the letters and the words in the text, relying mostly on prediction and context for comprehension, often using pictures on the page to cue young readers to learn words. Some experts believe cueing doesn't put enough emphasis on phonics or sounding out words. At least 19 states have banned it so far.
Colleagues, 70% of our fourth graders are struggling to read on grade level.
State Senator Rashawn Kemp, a former school teacher and principal, co-sponsored the legislation. He read a letter Missy wrote to him about her son on the Senate floor.
This method did not teach him to read, it taught him to guess, leaving him anxious, struggling, and believing he wasn't capable for his first 5 years of school. No child should experience that.
Part of me is a little emotional because we have a law now that's going to stop practices that hurt our kids.
The legislation faced criticism, including from the Georgia School Superintendent Association.
But to use the term ban from the classroom, I think instills a sense of fear in teachers that, is this strategy okay? Is this one not okay? It just creates a little bit of anxiety in terms of, am I doing something illegal in my classroom?
Georgia State University Dr. Caitlin Dooley also voiced concern. She chairs the university's Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education.
Are we saying that kids shouldn't have pictures in their books? It doesn't make any sense.
State Representative Bethany Ballard, also a former English teacher, authored the legislation.
It does not ban the use of picture books or pictures. All of this can be used as a supplemental material in the classroom, but they may not be used as the primary means of instruction.
The legislation also prevents schools from using a reading intervention program called Reading Recovery, used by Georgia school districts for decades to help struggling first graders. A 2023 University of Delaware study found it can be harmful to children. The instruction uses the 3-cueing method.
At the end of the day, 3-cueing is not aligned to the science of reading, and it has failed too many students. When you have a 70% rate of students not reading on grade level, that is an emergency 5-alarm fire across all areas.
The passing of the bill follows multiple Atlanta News First investigations over the past 5 months, part of our Reading Reset series, revealing potential causes to Georgia's literacy crisis.
We are crippling our young learners.
And its impact on children and their families.
His learning experience has impacted his mental health.
How did our reporting impact this legislation?
This really made a big impact. I know that our legislators saw it. Hopefully somehow our stories and our experiences can pave a better way or be part of paving a better way for future children and their families.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp recently signed the legislation into law, which took effect immediately. Atlanta News First Investigates reached out to Reading Recovery of North America, but it did not respond. The new law also overhauls state-approved teacher preparation programs and sets aside $10 million to fund about 50 new literacy coaches statewide. For more in our series, including resources for parents and our podcast that takes you behind the investigation, go to this story on atlantanewsfirst.com. Thanks for watching Atlanta News First Investigates.